Welcome to Long Lost Friends. I'm Elizabeth Eve King.
And I'm Andrea Goyan.
Today, we're excited to once again be talking to poet and writer of horror, fantasy, science fiction, Linda D. Addison. Linda is the first African-American winner of the Bram Stoker Award, which she then went on to win 5 times, just to show you, not a fluke. She's won many other awards, and also she chairs the HWA, which is the Horror Writers Association, Diverse Works Inclusion Committee, and also writes the Sears Table column for HWA's monthly newsletter. In addition, she has a Bachelor of Science from Carnegie Mellon in mathematics, just in case you're not impressed enough, and is currently the poetry editor at Space and Time magazine. Welcome, Linda.
Hi.
Thanks for being back with us, Linda.
My pleasure.
I know that today we have a special pet to show. Well, he's not really a pet. They're not really pets, are they, Elizabeth?
These aren't really pets because they're just passing through my house on the way to the great outside world. They were orphaned as babies. Oh, and one of them just flew out of the cage and away. So, but here's the other one. It's a little baby downy woodpecker. See?
Hold it still a little if you can. It's hard to see because of your
baby. There you go.
Oh, there you go. A little bit.
It's gorgeous.
Put him in front of you.
Oh, where? Yeah,
you've got to block the green.
I have a virtual, but
there you go. That's better.
There you go.
Hard to see that.
And
baby.
Don't take my eye out, sweetheart. Yes, we love you. Okay, and there she goes. I'll let them fly around somewhere right now. So they're flying around the house now, along with the jay. I actually have 3 flying birds in the house. Okay.
You're lucky your cat's so well behaved.
He is, and my cat is very well behaved. I have some more birds downstairs, but they should all go in about a week. And it's kind of special because woodpeckers are very hard to raise from babies to adults. They usually don't make it. And I discovered a magic formula maybe, and these have made it. It's a disgusting formula, but they're going to live, I think.
Yay. Good job.
So today we wanted to talk to you about your work with the Horror Writers Association, the Sears Table. I mean, it's just, you do so much for them, with them. Part of it is a giving back, a mentoring, which is so much part of you and your work and your personality is just so, yeah. So talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, in general, I have been helped so much in my early career by other writers like Jack Ketchum, who's Dallas. Just not even so much taking class, although I did take a class with Dallas on how to read, which was extraordinary. Changed me, and I went ahead and changed everybody. I've done workshops on how to read out loud. He was amazing. That's like a third segment, or later if you want to talk about it. But I had so much positive feedback from writers I admired, people in the industry early in my career. And so none of us get where we are by ourselves. I mean, if someone says they did, okay, that's your opinion, but I don't think anyone does. And so to me, it was very important to also become part of that giving back. Early on, before these 2 committees that you mentioned, I became part of the mentor program. That's one of the awards I won from the HWA was the Mentor Award, because I just love to do that. To me, seeing someone inspired by something that I've given them in some way is the same as inspiring myself. To me, there's no difference. So mentoring is just everything. I'll go to the other 2 committees in a minute, but I wanted to mention that, I mentored through the HWA program, but I also do it just kind of hit and run, So every convention I go to, I do host an open mic. And more often than not, I meet or I come across someone whose poetry is just mind-blowing. And so I start a connection. And so that becomes a start for mentoring for me. But the 2 latest people that I've mentored, I have to mention their name because they're doing so amazing. They're just publishing, they're getting award attention, and every time it just makes me want to fly. One is Jamal Hodge, who was already known as an award-winning movie producer, and he did a film based on one of my poems, a poem called Morning Meal Like Morning Loss, not Morning, Good Morning America. And amazing poem, I mean, amazing film. And then the other one is Maxwell I. Gold, who has come out since he and I worked together with like 3 collections, I think, since then. And Jamal has a poetry collection coming out of his own next year. But both of these totally different kind of writing, but they just engaged in making the writing better. And you know, going back and forth with them, and they're just like flying, and it just makes me so happy. So the first committee, the Diverse Works Inclusion Committee. So in 2016, Lisa Morton was president of HWA, and she approached me about an idea of starting this committee and creating a column in the HWA newsletter called Sears Table, SEERS, Sears Table, to highlight underrepresented writers and editors. Because at that time, there was a sense, and I also had the same sense, that a lot of membership were not aware of all this other ocean, endless ocean of creators of horror writing, because they just weren't exposed to it. So the idea was to expose the membership. And also we made sure that that particular column online on the HWA site is public. So you don't have to be a member to read it. That was really important too. So it was started in 2016. I wasn't the chair then. I became the unofficial chair after that, because I'm so committed to it. You know, I did. In fact, today is the first is when I usually send out an email to people in the committee and go, it's time again to pick people to write up. And I can't say and since then we've done about 380 people since 2016 we've written up. And in the write-up, we do a bio, we do a picture of them, we do a picture of the book or magazine that they're published in, we do an excerpt of the work, and then connections to their social media, like website, Twitter, and all that sort of thing. I don't think we can quantitatively say how much we have influenced membership in the world, but I can say that I feel like when we see now on the responses and recommendation for awards in HWA, I know by talking to people who we've highlighted that they've seen an increase of intention in their work. And so that's what's really meaningful. We're not doing this for awards. We're doing this to say, here's people you can read. And I feel like in my soul that we are seeing a response. So it feels really, really good to let people know.
That is, I mean, it's so important, that kind of network ability. Like I've that for myself with the writing community on Twitter. Like I get exposed to incredible works just by what people are posting, their friends' work, and things I would never see. And it's opened up worlds for me. So I think anything like that is
Yeah, it's my inspiration for it in general was when I received my first Bram Stoker, someone said to me, you know, you're the first Black to get it. And I was like, what? No, that can't be. It was true. We went back and we looked, it was true. And so for a few years after that, I won the second, I won the third. And now it's like, okay, this has got to stop, because I'm not the only Black writing horror, you know. So then I believe by setting intention, we find ways to make that intention true. And so having an opportunity to do this in 2016 was a big part of that. You know, there's just so many people out there, not just Black, but just so many different cultures and levels of things, writing unsettling, as we talk about what horror is about, unsettling stories and poems and plays and movies. And so yeah, there's a whole world of it that people need to read.
Yeah, and it's such a service you do to the writers and to the readers by
Mhm.
by putting out new different people. I was trying to find we're going to have a link below for some of the Sears tables so that people can just click on and say, oh, that's what they're talking about.
Mhm,
Unless
mhm.
they already know, in which case they can do it anyway and say, oh, this is one I did read, unless it's one they did read, which never mind.
We can put links for the two writers you mentioned too, if they have, you said they have collections or one of them will be. I mean, it'd be nice to link them below so people can look into them too, since you mentioned them.
I'd be up
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah,
So,
And
I was gonna say that, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say that when I was starting early on, I had a writer really help me a lot. And I was like, how do you have time to do this? He says, it's what writers do. I was helped, I helped, and it just seems to be a very common, beautiful thing about this community. You
yeah,
know?
and it is a choice, I tell people that I do spend a good amount of my day not my own writing, and I can choose to do that. And then people know that because I'm on these committees, but there's an awful lot of well-known writers who are teaching courses, who are doing mentoring that people don't really realize. But you don't have to. I just want to make that point. You don't have to. But it is very important for me personally. So I get so much joy from seeing people, even in my classes, that I don't see them again when I do teaching, and I see the work in those 3 hours from beginning to end. It just makes me so excited.
yeah, it's amazing stuff. And I think it informs everything. It informs your poetry and everything you do. It wouldn't be that kind of powerful work if you weren't also giving back, and that comes out in everything. So thank
Yeah,
you.
Yes.
thank
Thanks
you
for being
for saying
that
that.
giving
I
back
appreciate
person.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So
And
along those lines, oh, sorry, Elizabeth and I are very talking over each other today. Would you talk some about your diversity works inclusion committee? Isn't that no wait, the diversity grant?
Okay,
That's what
so I just had to look at my notes because I want to be sure about it. So that was a new initiative started in 2020. I think John Palisano was the president then. But I mean, literally, there's been each president has had so much to do with opening up HWA to more and more levels of writers, teachers, librarians. I mean, it's just been wonderful to be part of. So in 2020, the idea came to do what's called the HWA Diversity Grant, which does you can look online to see this whole definition of what we mean by diversity, but it's pretty much like encompasses everything and everybody that's underrepresented. So the idea is that we give $500. It's a small amount of money, but people have to send in their applications for it. And then we go through and make sure that, everything is there. They have to, you don't send in writing samples, but just like, what would you do? The basic thing is, once you define how you fit that community, the diversity community, what would you do with this money? That's the most important thing. And for many of the applicants and people who have received the grant, it's a part of doing like online classes, maybe going to StokerCon, that may be part of what they do, materials, books. I mean, there's a lot of things. And we've gotten applications from every country. India, Africa, I mean, of course, the United States, Mexico. I mean, they're coming from all over the world. And even though this has only been around since 2020, we've seen people give back feedback to us about how this really became part of a turning point for them.
Wow.
So it's so important that we do that. And the money comes from donations, which I'm going to become more aggressive with. I think I'm going to pick a day each month from here forward for next year and just like do a shout out. $5. You know what I'm saying? $5 can make a difference because you get enough $5 and that's a big part of it. It's all tax deductible. Not 1 cent goes to anybody but to the grant. You know, all the people on these committees in HWA are putting in time without money, you know, all volunteer. So I again, you know, to see someone be able to take this and do something that they couldn't do before is so overwhelmingly wonderful for me and satisfying. And this committee is only 4 people, so I'm going to mention Larissa Glasser, Grady Hendricks, Maxwell I. Gold, my guy, and Violet Castro. These are 4 very different people. We wanted the committee to be diverse also, and they've served since 2020 each year. So it's been wonderful. We give what we have, what we get. You know, if we get enough money, then that's how many of them we give out after we've looked at the applications. So it's quite wonderful. I mean, it's opened up, I think, not just HWA, but the horror community to writers from Africa, from India, from other countries that we never really looked at that way, and brought them.
Oh, I was going to say that's one of the really exciting things in the speculative fiction market in general right now is the global diversity that it's seeing right now. It's really amazing.
I love it. I love it because I have, you know, as reference, I have fables and fairy tale books from all over the world because I find that inspiring. So why should we not be reading these things? Why would the reader not want to read different versions of stories from other cultures? So
with the diversity grant, I mean, we can certainly link to it, but what is the timeline for people? Is it throughout the year, or is there a deadline where people have to put their applications in?
Yeah, actually we just ended. The deadline was the beginning of June to basically yesterday or today. It's 1 month. And I'll give you all the links, but there's a link to, there's so many other scholarships that HWA is just throwing money out there that people need to know about. If you're a woman, there's like hundreds of dollars. And all of these, I'm saying, and all of these, exactly, all of these scholarships and grants, for the most part, open for applications around June, you know, for a month. Some open earlier. There's a scholarship for to bring for a person to win to go to StokerCon, to travel to wherever the convention is. There's a virtual version of that since 2020. We've been doing a virtual version of StokerCon convention. There's a winner that can come in person, and there's a winner for the VR version of it. So, I mean, there's just wonderful slants of this. You do not have to be a member to apply for any of them. And
wow.
So yeah, when they open, I'm always like sending them out to all these people, like different areas. I'm saying, please, please, please send an application in. So
yeah, and please let us put the links below too, because that's exciting. It sounds like we missed this year, Andrea.
Yeah, I think Marge,
I know.
Simon, I believe is I would double check this, but Marge Simon, who is one of my early heroes, and didn't know she was my mentor. She has lifetime achievement, but she's been writing amazing poetry forever. I believe she is like overlooks all the scholarships, but anyway, it's I'm saying it's just money waiting to be given away, folk.
That's amazing. I love that.
That is fabulous.
Everybody.
And unusual.
Right. And unusual. I don't know that do any of the other organizations really do that? I mean, I'm not familiar enough to say, but.
Yes, well, I know SIFWA, which is the science fiction, I don't want to say it all
fantasy,
wrong.
but yeah.
Writers, so which I also an active member of. I know they do have things to support for conventions and stuff. I can't tell you what the details of them are. SFPA doesn't, which is the Speculative Fantasy Science Fiction Poetry Association. I know I'm saying that wrong. They don't do conventions per se, so they don't have that kind of thing. But you know, they also, what I love about that, and I tell a lot of poets to look at it, is that to become a member of SFPA is a very small amount of money, which is tax deductible, but you know, I understand that. And they do a lot of publications like the anthology for the Riesling, which I edited, the anthology for the Dwarf Stars. And again, to nominate someone, you have to be a member, but you don't have to be a member to be nominated. So, you know, they have a lot, they have their magazine, Starline, they have a lot of things that they have an outlet for poets to in speculative area to be published, that you don't have to be a member to send your publication in. So,
Wow.
you know, I think every little corner has something.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So much information. It's great. Love it.
So
And it's
thank-
nice to know the support's out there, you know, that there's all this really, that these networks are supportive, not just sort of mouthpieces, or would that be the right word? Poet, tell me, mouthpieces.
And also that it's open to non-members a lot of times, because sometimes it's just like, even if it's not much, you know, it's like there's this organization and that organization that costs this and that, and it's kind of like, right, you know, at
Adds
certain
up.
times you can
I
be
mean,
like,
there are things that you only have as an option if you are a member of those three organizations, but each of them, and I know the most about HWA because I'm very involved in that. I think sometimes I want to put in bold letters when I put the call out for the scholarships, which, like I said, some of them are like $2,000, $2,500. I mean, we're talking money, honey, you know, and to say you do not have to be a member to apply for this.
wow.
Very
That's
cool.
fabulous. So thank you so much for talking to us about all this. It's amazing. There's so much more we will talk about with you. Sorry, I had a bird just jump on my keyboard right in front of me. Can't
Cool.
see him, but yeah, he's my little blue jay. He's very, very cute, actually, and really smart and really obnoxious. In fact, I had to cover a manuscript, an old manuscript. He was trying to eat this manuscript. He's flying around with little pieces in his mouth. Okay, so the best thing I learned this week, the best thing, so there are these creatures, I guess you could call them, called slime molds, which are one of the most amazing things in the universe, I think. They don't have a brain, they're unicelled, but they'll be like a mold, and they all get together in the forest at a certain time, like when the food supply is scarce. They all gather together and they turn into basically a little slug. You can see videos of this. And they move through the forest like a slug until they get somewhere and they flatten out, and they send out a fruiting body like a mushroom head that spores out and creates more slime mold. And these creatures, like if you put them in a maze of the Japanese places in Japan where the subway, they have a very efficient subway, and you put cornflakes for each population center, the slime molds plot out like the Japanese subway. They know how to get from place to place. And the most amazing thing I learned this week was that they respond to different kinds of music. If you have slime molds on a thing and you play them different music, either they'll be moving around and everything, or they'll be sitting there like, I don't think so. So I thought that was pretty incredible. And it also, they don't have brains as we know them. And we're just realizing how much that's not.
You don't need a brain?
Don't need a brain.
So did they get any detail? Was it like across the board that they always respond better to one kind of music than the other, or does it depend on the slime mold group?
That is a fabulous, fascinating question, and I don't know. And in fact, the researcher was even like, well, the researcher assistant who was doing some of the music studies, he's like, she's 19. I didn't recognize any of the music she mentioned, whether they liked it or not. But apparently they were moving to some, and also they were dividing the slime molds and finding out if they would join together again or go separately for the food, if it meant like becoming their own individuals, which they did. So yeah, just all kinds of really interesting stuff.
Wow.
So that's mine.
Cool.
I was excited though about the music stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. So I was listening to a podcast that's called Stuff You Should Know, which can be a really cool podcast. And they had this one that I was listening to yesterday that was about butterflies, which was great since we were talking about butterflies recently. There was so much information, but I didn't realize that butterflies and moths, the butterflies were all moths at one point, and that the differentiation was that moths basically mate at night and butterflies mate during the day. So at some point, butterflies like pulled away from the moths and became daylight creatures. And that's when their coloring changed so that they're bright to kind of blend in with daytime things. And the moths are browns and dark browns and so to blend into the night. And if I remember this correctly, the moths are more driven by the moon and the butterflies are by the sun. So they follow like monarchs follow what he said, UV to navigate in their long journeys. Listen to the podcast. It's amazing. There's so much information about these butterflies. I was just, oh, that was
Wow.
just the tip of the butterfly iceberg. So, Linda,
For the
what did you?
proboscis.
So, what I learned this week, I'm putting it in terms of, I think I've mentioned before how inspired I am by science. I've been like a science math freak my whole life because I'm always trying to figure out why things happen. I'm also sort of a human psychology freak because I'm like, why did that person do that? So I have a subscription to space.com and they send me daily things about what's happening. And a lot of these I end up making notes in my journal because I want to write a poem about it or they're going to become part of a story or something. So what I saw this week was, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to mess it up, is they talked about the fact that they've discovered that there's a bacterial enzyme that copies DNA that makes more mistakes in zero gravity. Now, who cares? Bacteria enzyme, we don't know what that is. We don't care about that. But we all know what DNA does, right? It all has to do with creating each of us as we are, right? From our mother and father's DNA. So then what I hooked on with this is, wow, so that would mean that if we had people living in space stations and they had children, or their DNA could be changed so that when they came back, they had children, that would be really different. So then I went into a whole dark sci-fi concept.
Of course you did.
Of course I did.
That's great.
So yeah.
That's
So
wonderful.
cool.
And it makes me think a little epigenetic stuff, which is just, you know, it's not that old, but it's so, I worked for a little bit in Bosnia after the war, after the massacre, I don't know what you call it, but just like really good friends who'd been through that kind of hell. And I was, you know, thinking that's got to have changed your genes that you would pass on to your kids,
Absolutely.
you know? And so, and a bacteria, of course, you know.
So if they can prove it there, they have, like, how much can they prove it here? I mean, no, that is, I'm mad for epigenetics, just like I am for like quantum mechanics. So mad for it.
Me too.
Oh,
Well, thank you so much for talking with us again.
yes,
We can't wait to have you back on sometime.
definitely.
And and we also want to thank our wonderful producer, Maria Korolov. We couldn't do without you. Thank you,
Yes,
Maria.
thank you, Maria. Thank you. And we all are affiliated. Well, not Linda. No, she is. Elizabeth and
Yeah.
I and Maria are affiliated with MetaStellar Magazine, which is an online speculative fiction magazine, and we publish science fiction, horror, and fantasy. And we are thrilled to have twice a year have a submission period and get a bunch of news stories that we gosh, I can't talk. We publish, and then we also do reprints throughout the year. So check us out, read some of the stories, and if you'd like to support us, visit our Patreon page and give us some money. And that all goes to paying for our original speculative fiction because everybody else does everything they do as a volunteer. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope you had as much fun with Linda as we did. And we will see you all again soon. Thank you, Linda. Thanks.
My
Bye,
joy, pleasure, enjoyed every second again.
everybody.